Welcome back to the Creepy Files. This one is a bit different, but we'll get back to our regular videos soon. Here's what we're covering next. Alright, I've seen the new It 3 times now, and I've got a lot to say. First, let me get the spoiler-free review really quickly, then we'll get into more detail. Overall, the movie was really good. Some characters definitely outshined others, but the chemistry worked all the way through. I wish there had been less CGI scarefest stuff and more Pennywise, but the parts where they do it right were very tense. Not a perfect movie or as good as the first one, but it was a really good sequel. If you liked It 1 even a little bit, definitely go see the movie. Okay, spoiler warning. To fully break down my thoughts on this film, let's break it down into 3 parts. Characters, scares, story. Characters. Bill and Beverly. These two were the weak links in the film, which was surprising considering they were the biggest stars on board. But why? Well, first, Bill. Bill, unlike most of the other characters, seemed absolutely nothing like his character from the first one. If you hadn't told me they were supposed to be the same character, I wouldn't have known. He wasn't really the leader in this movie. He was kind of stupid. Georgie's not a live Bill, and he's definitely still not a small child after 27 years. He stumbled around most of the time, and he was having a breakdown like 70% of the movie. I don't even think this is necessarily the fault of James McAvoy. He wasn't really written to be like older Bill. In short, he wasn't really interesting to watch and didn't match his younger version. As for Beverly, I think what happened to her character was even worse. Once again, I don't think this was Jessica Chastain's fault. In the first movie, one of my criticisms was definitely the fact that Beverly and Mike didn't really get a lot of time or characterization. I mean that along with Stan as well, but we definitely got a lot more of Beverly than either Stan or Mike. Although a lot of her character was used as a prop for the love triangle in the first one, there was an interesting setup of some of the things that could be explored in the sequel. How her abuse affected her, how her independence and strength makes her an outcast in the typical societal view of a woman, her relationships with not only Bill and Ben, but her first just friends like Richie, Eddie, Mike, and Stanley, and how that changed her, but we get like nothing. She was even more of a prop for the retrodden love triangle that we already resolved in the first one. I understand that some of these problems were in the book, but I don't think that's much of an excuse for Beverly's character anymore because they changed her quite a bit from the book. For good reason. Stephen King, no offense to the fans out there, really sucked at writing her character. I mean, he was a complete coked up weirdo while making that character, as he admits. We barely got anything with her husband in the movie, which would have been interesting to see her overcome that demon. She didn't really interact with anyone besides being fodder for Ben and Bill, and she didn't really seem as independent or tough in this one. Once again, the same problem with Bill, she just didn't match the first movie, but she also was even more bland, which sucks because I was really looking forward to seeing how her and Mike's characters were evolved considering how they didn't get a lot in Chapter 1. Richie and Eddie. 100% the stars of this film. Bill Hader and James Ransone bring the characters perfectly to life as adults and are funny and dramatic. Richie's character is able to be the comic relief without ever feeling like he's not a real person, and Eddie is given even more time to shine. I liked that they didn't shy away from Richie's romantic feelings towards Eddie, although it would have been interesting to see more of Eddie's side as well. I don't want to just talk about this though, because even though I think it's really important to have non-straight characters, I also don't want to talk about it so much that it's like that's what defines the character. I really liked how we got to see how Eddie's relationship with his mother affected him in adulthood, and I especially liked that his wife was played by the same woman who played his mother in the first movie. I like that even in adulthood he's falling into the same trappings, and we can see that he's become almost tired of continuously bowing to this mother figure. He still does it, but it seems like when he gets Mike's call, he's at a point in his life where he's starting to realize how negative his relationships are. I also really like that we get to see more of Richie's jokes being used as a defense mechanism. He's a lot more vulnerable in this movie, and I like how you see him break and become scared, sad, or horrified right after making a joke, or barely being able to finish one because of his fear. Definitely standout performances. Mike. I really like Mike in this. He doesn't shine as much as Richie or Eddie, but Isaiah Mustafa does as much as he can to take what little Mike was given in the first movie and expand upon it. Sometimes he's a bit over the top, but it makes sense for someone who's been stuck in a haunted town for his whole life. He kind of took the leadership role that used to be Bill's, probably because Bill didn't do much of anything important in the movie, and he's very good at it. I like his veiled desperation you can feel coming from him, and how sorry he seems for tricking his friends. I don't have much else to say about him. Solid performance. Okay, Ben seems like the most overlooked character in this movie. Out of all the adaptations, I think Jay Ryan does the best job. Sure, Bill Hader and James Ransone have more noticeable performances, but adult Ben seems like the most faithful and realistic evolution of the character. Just watching interviews, you can tell he took a lot of consideration of Jeremy Ray Taylor's performance.
Yeah, I watched the first one a billion times. Then I just watched clips on YouTube of Jeremy Ray Taylor, the young Ben's performance over and over again. In particular, there's a moment where he first meets Beverly in chapter 1 and she signs his yearbook and he's listening to New Kids on the Block. And she says something about the new kid and he blushes on cue. And it's just the sweetest moment. So I took that to infuse into the older Ben. I thought it was a really nice moment to take in as a kind of gateway into the character.
Just like the first movie, Ben is a caring and kind character, but as is the natural evolution, Ben's self-consciousness leads him to get fit, as happens in the book. But with that, he gains more confidence. We see a little assertiveness in the first movie, but with his confidence boost after becoming healthier and fit, he gains more decisiveness and self-assuredness along with keeping his kindness. A very well done and thoughtful adaptation and performance. Stan was also kind of looked over. He didn't get a lot of time. I feel like they kind of ruined certain aspects of him. There's a speech that young Stan does in this movie that he did in the first movie, but they reshot it in this one, and the new speech is just kind of weird. It's just overly cliche, and I liked the one in the first movie that got cut out a lot better. But the adult performance was really great. Andy Bean sounds and looks exactly like Wyatt Oleff, and he got his mannerisms down really well. The small amount that we see of Stan trying to act like everything's alright and just trying to make casual conversation when he realizes that there really isn't any other option for him except death either in Derry or at his home that night. It's a very well done, subtle performance, and even though I knew it had to happen for the story, I'm kind of upset we didn't get to see more of it. Andy Bean is fantastic in this movie. Alright, I'll try not to go on too much about the scares because the character part has already been really long, but there are basically two types of scares in this movie. Spooky, scary, uh-oh, and oh shit. Sometimes the spooky, scary uh-ohs can work. They're not really scary, but they're fun. The best ones are the ones with Pennywise. Pennywise is a fun song for Richie. I actually did find the Paul Bunyan statue coming to life fun, not scary, but it's cool that they incorporated it from the book. Spider Stan was fun and a cool reference, and I liked all the losers' little mini adventures at the end in Pennywise's lair. And the mirror maze was pretty cool. But most of the time, they're not very good. As soon as a leper shows up with Eddie, it's so cliche there's no way it could even be surprising. There's also too many of the, oh, something's gonna happen. Oh, there's nothing. And I know it's gonna happen as soon as the rising music starts. A lot of this also comes from some of the really obvious CGI. The whole lead up to the Mrs. Kirsch scene is fantastic, and they ruin it with a googly-eyed abomination. But the oh shit scares, they are great. The opening is actually super disturbing. The whole lead up with Mrs. Kirsch is great. The lead up with Eddie's flashback is good. I like how specific to Eddie it is and his fear of the AIDS epidemic that he mentioned in the first movie, with all the needles and blood. The flashback to Beverly's dad is one of the only jump scares that got me and is also really disturbing. The beginning of Ben's flashback with Beverly suddenly insulting him was really well done, which was then ruined by more really weird, goofy CGI. I also thought the girl being killed by Pennywise under the bleachers was really unsettling and a decent jump scare. Let's also not forget the characters that make the scares possible. Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise is fantastic and super entertaining, and Teach Grant as Henry Bowers is so much fun to watch. Fantastic performances for both of them, and I honestly would have liked to see more of Henry. Okay, finally, story. I think it was a pretty good adaptation of the book, but that doesn't mean it was perfect. Once again, I'm a fan of the ideas in the It book, but it was really weird and had some flaws. The Native American ritual of Chud was a little more tasteful in the movie, but still just weird. Beat by beat, it was fine in general, but it feels like some stuff is still left to be desired. It definitely doesn't feel as fast as the first one. It's a bit more of a drag. No matter how many times I see the first one, I'm always engaged, but even by the second time, I got a little bored about halfway through the movie. You definitely need to be in the mood for it. You can't just pop it in like the first one. So, in summary, I'll go back to my spoiler-free review in the beginning. Overall, the movie was really good. Some characters definitely outshined others, but the chemistry definitely worked all the way through. I wish it had less CGI scarefest stuff and more Pennywise, but the parts they did do right were very tense. Not a perfect movie, or as good as the first one, but a really good sequel. If you like it one even a little bit, definitely go see this movie. I'll probably watch this movie again, but not until it comes out on DVD or streaming, and it'll probably be a double feature with the first one. And I am looking forward to the supercut. Coming up next, we've got these. See you guys next time.